1982, baby, yeah.
Yeah, a year before I was born.
Mm,
Same.
I was two.
I was not alive.
Yeah, you're the young one.
Well,
Shit.
Lindsay's
So,
younger
so,
than me.
so I guess I am the elder among all of you.
You're
In
the
this
wise.
Honored
conversation, I
elder,
guess
Nick.
so.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
the
I
wise
was
movie
two in
elder.
1982. So, yeah, being born at the turn of a decade makes it really easier to track how old you are.
Well, welcome everyone to our series, our brunch series, the summer of 1982. I am
Yes.
here with. Let me get all these people down. I'm here, I'm here with Cody. I'm here with Nick. I am here with our special guest Lisa, and I am here with my lovely wife Lindsay. How is everyone doing today?
Great. Yeah, I just had myself a breakfast of pancakes, sausage, and eggs.
Mm.
That's usually like my more normal Saturday morning breakfast, and eat that while checking out old cartoons on YouTube. Usually, Real Ghostbusters or The Tick.
Nice.
Oh,
Nice. We've
yeah.
we've been watching Bobby's World at night with my kiddos. So
Oh
we
my
watch a
God,
lot of
Bobby's World.
Bobby's World.
Bobby
I,
Chicory.
Um,
I
but
thought,
we check out the D&D cartoon a lot, which we've seen all the way through. But we love them. Um,
I so one thing about Bobby's World, the way the mom talked always bugged me. I didn't know how Midwestern accents were a thing, and I always thought she sounded so much like a Viking.
I
don't
mean,
say
I
the word.
guess that part of the country has a lot of what Norwegian and Swedish and like that
Yeah,
Scandinavian ancestry.
True, true.
yeah.
Very
Well,
funny.
well, today it is early. Uh, Checking the watch. We are talking the 1982 Steven Spielberg classic E.T.
Yes, the big one.
The
Like,
big one. This
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, Steven Spielberg was already kind of a household name, but by then he he did have a couple of flops. Like 1941 didn't do all that well, but yeah, E.T. That was pretty much the one that catapulted him.
Well, I
Right.
think after this he starts Amblin, right? And then like he's a
Mm.
name just attached
Yep,
to movies that he doesn't even
Did,
have any creative involvement other than Steven Spielberg presents.
yep,
did
yeah.
you guys
That was the start of that whole era. Steven Spielberg puts his name on something and it prints out money.
know that Amblin was a name of a short film that he did
Yeah.
uh,
Yes.
Oh.
as a student, and he took that name. It was called Amblin.
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
about
that was.
Ramblin or Amblin or
I
Yeah.
Mosey.
think he had produced Zemeckis's first two features too, but I don't think they were
Yeah.
Amblin movies. But I think he produced Used Cars and I Want to Hold Your Hand because Zemeckis and his writing partner Bob Gale wrote the script for 1941.
Ah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I shall. Uh. For those of y'all who don't know, I'm kind of something of a logo aficionado, a movie logo aficionado. Like like seeing how they evolve, and I always thought of kind of how in Amblin's logo, it's basically E.T. and Elliot riding over the moon, which is like that part of from that iconic scene, and kind of says, "Yep, this is what put me on the map." So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I always like hearing little bits of trivia like that, like how New Line Cinema, the nickname they gave themselves is the house that Freddy built because Nightmare on Elm Street was such a huge hit for them at the time.
Yeah,
Well,
and I think
Lisa, no. Go ahead, Cody. I'm sorry.
well, Lisa had so much fun with us last week. She's like, Yeah, I'll come back and talk ET. So thanks for coming back, Lisa.
Yeah,
Yes.
Oh, my
sure.
pleasure. I love this movie so much. It has such a special place in my heart. Like I said, I have the poster. I had several stuffed ETs over the years. Seeing ET always reminds me of Universal Studios and, how much fun I had at that park growing up. So yeah, it's just
Oh, okay.
Interesting enough about that ride, which it's still there because when I went in 2019, I believe it is the only one of the few original rides left in the park.
which
Wow.
park was it? Was it the one in LA or the one in
Orlando. I
Orlando?
went to the one in
Yeah,
Yeah.
Orlando, and
because
that's like it.
yeah.
It's actually it's kind of funny because I went to I went to the both parks, the LA park and the Orlando park. I never rode the ET ride.
It's so magical, just like the movie. You get to see ET's little
It
planet and
but
stuff.
it's not at the one in LA, I noticed, because I went there a couple years ago. Like, I only got to be there like a day or two because I was actually there for a family wedding, but we rode everything pretty much. And I was like, oh, I don't see the ET ride. It's kind of sad as you get older. Like, a lot of the rides that you grew up with they're not there anymore. It's not like Jaws and Back to the Future and ET
Oh
focus like it
God,
was when we were kids.
I can't. I think I lost count on how many times I went on the Back to the Future ride.
Oh,
Oh,
I know.
wow.
I loved that ride.
I've seen where people are. They have these. They're gaming chairs, but they're like motion chairs that you can sit in. So they'll swivel and tilt and stuff like that. And they're pretty neat looking. But a lot of people are. They have recreated the or released the Back to the Future ride on YouTube, so you can
Oh,
watch the entirety of it. And they
Oh,
sync their chairs up with this, and actually like can experience the ride at home, which is pretty cool. But
oh,
that
actually,
Wow.
is
but
cool.
that also came with there was a DVD set of the whole Back to the Future trilogy, and one of the special features on one of the movies, I think it was part three, that had the ride on it.
maybe that's where they got it from, because I just remember seeing it on YouTube, and I'm like, oh wow, that's awesome, because we were looking up the different rides and stuff, and my kids, they're big into Jaws, and I was like, wait a minute, that's Back to the Future. Let's watch this. And sure
Yeah,
enough, it was like the entirety of the ride, which I thought was really cool. Like the beginning where Biff steals, uh,
yeah, the
the
DeLorean.
DeLorean, and then you chase them through time and stuff. And I always thought that was pretty cool. But
Yeah.
so you we all love ET, and I'm sure we've all seen it a million times. But what are your earliest memories? Like what can you tell me about ET? Like when you first watched ET, and what kind of impact it had on you at that age? And anyone can go. I'm just throwing this out there.
I think
Well,
for me, I watched it like over and over and over again. And I know some kids were kind of afraid of ET. Like I have a best friend who was very scared of ET. She thought he lived in her closet, that he was going to come out and get her. But I always found him very cuddly, and a really cherished memory I have is it's kind of a almost this is almost like a tangent, but there was a day that I was at a arcade, and there was one of those claw machines, and I won a little stuffed figure, and it was clearly an ET knockoff. And I remember I named like it looked kind
Was
of
it
like
Mac and
ET,
me?
but
oh
no, it wasn't
God,
that
that
me. That would have
Yeah,
been frightening, but no,
Cody
but it,
in my head thinking my thoughts.
yeah, but he looked a little off, and I named him Cosmo and like swore up and down he was somehow different from ET, but he was definitely ET. And I carried
ET.
that little guy with me until all the flocking on his little body like fell off. I mean, I just loved him, and I loved this movie so much. So I don't know, just watching it over and over again at school, at home, I just have so many warm memories with this movie.
I was the same way. Like we, I remember watching. We'd rent it, and my grandmother bought it for a birthday. Like it was probably around 6 or 7. So then I'd watch it like a ton. Then just on repeat. And everybody would be like, "That movie is so sad. Why are you watching it?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it is, but it's like it's fun at the beginning. Like he gets an alien friend. How cool is that?"
Yeah.
And I was one of those that went back when the with the re-release. I remember going to see it twice in Jacksonville. Like I went by myself, and I was like, okay. I went home, and I was like, I told my little brother and sister, I was like, if you want to go see this, I'll take you back because, it's not every day that you get to see it on the big screen. So I thought that was cool. I know changes and all. I know a lot of people are not fans. Um, like it didn't bother me enough. I think it was more of the fact that I was getting to see it in a theater
Yeah.
more than anything. So
The changes were like removing the guns and putting
Yeah.
walkie-talkies in the cops' hands, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, it also
yeah,
takes out two lines in the movie. The where Elliot calls his older brother penis breath is taken out, which is a great moment because the mom is like trying to get onto Elliot, but she's also laughing because she thinks it's funny.
Yeah.
as a
And then
parent, we've had
Aw.
the once, when you're
Yeah.
like,
I
oh
can.
no, you can't say that, but you're dying inside because it's so hilarious.
I
Yeah.
think there's a scene where she says something about you can't dress like a terrorist or you look like a terrorist or something, and they
Yeah.
took it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was like right
Yeah,
after 9/11
yep.
when that
Yeah, it was
happened.
2002.
So
So
yeah. Like I guess for sensitivity's sake, um they changed that part.
Hmm.
Like I think I'm probably the one who's out of all of you who probably saw it the least, because it really wasn't one of my formative childhood movies or any of my cherished rewatches. It is a good movie. I will definitely give it that. But my mom took me to see it right when it came out, and like I said, I was two, so I don't remember any of it. But I remember having a lot of the ET posters that McDonald's used to give away. Excuse me. And McDonald's used to give away all these different ET posters. I had those on my wall. I also remember there was a storybook version, and Michael Jackson narrated it.
Oh
I
God.
I actually I have the book to that. And I don't
Yeah,
have the tape.
there was a book, there was a storybook that you could read with a tape read along, and Michael Jackson was narrating it. This was also right as Michael Jackson was about to blow up. I mean, he was
Well, he
already,
was
a star,
Well,
with
yeah,
the
I
Jackson
think
5, but
Thriller
he
came out the same year as ET.
oh
he
yeah.
was a
And
huge
remember,
fan.
he was Captain EO at Disneyland.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
I
I
yeah,
remember.
By
remember
Francis Ford Coppola.
the first time I ever saw Thriller was actually at Disneyland. I mean, like you could go into this theater and they would play Thriller, and then these actors would come out and like do the dance, and that was like my first memory of seeing it. So
Oh
he was
wow.
very entrenched in like the pop culture. I mean, he was truly everywhere.
Yeah. Um and then I also saw it when it was re-released in 2002, and I and then I saw it when it was released in its original version on Netflix probably a few months ago. So I was glad. Of course, you said it's no longer streaming, so I'm kind of glad I caught it when I did.
right.
It- yeah, so I'm kind of in between you guys's all experience. I think I knew about ET before I actually saw it because it's just one of those movies that's in the cultural lexicon of
Mhm.
Hmm.
everywhere. Because I remember apparently when I was young, like maybe still even itty bitty baby, my sister put stuffed animals around me in her closet and said we were playing ET because she wasn't happy about me being around.
Oh.
But I remember when I finally watched it, like from beginning to end. I was still young, but I wasn't like little. I probably was like 9 or 10 and rented it, but I remember just being encaptured by it just from the very beginning. And I think part of it is because not only is it the POV of the children, but it like it's a realistic portrayal of children, right? It's not movies.
Yes,
It's
yes.
It's not
not a movie.
sanitized. Yeah.
I
It's
mean, even
yeah.
though Gertie Drew Barrymore has a few lines that are like, "Oh, we'll just be a cute little girl here," but like,
Hmm.
and the way they position the camera is from the height of the children too, right? So it's like it really is one of the best movies about children because it's not kids acting in a movie way. Like this is how kids would act, really.
And a
Uh-huh.
really compassionate look at the single mom too, I feel like, because I feel like in the early 80s it's starting to get to a point where we're like acknowledging that families sometimes split up and that, there are single parents and portraying them in a positive light. I mean, you've got it. I mean, it's very obvious that this had a huge inspiration for Stranger Things, but I feel like even
Mhm.
Joyce's character is very, inspired by the moms of the 80s. There were so many great moms
Totally.
in
Yeah.
movies.
This
Well, I
is
mean, sorry, don't mean to step on your toes, Cody. Go ahead.
Oh, I think I might have stepped on yours, but I was gonna say, this also is Spielberg very much in his daddy issues at the time, even
Oh yeah.
though, and we're probably gonna get a little bit more of that with his newest movie, The Fablemans, coming out, which is
Well,
supposed to
that
be
is kind of a loose autobiography.
right. It's semi
Oh.
autobiographical, but if you
Oh.
guys have watched the documentary they did I, fr-
Yes,
about
it's
Spielberg,
such a great
it talks
documentary.
about how he actually found out the truth about his parents' divorce, and it really wasn't his father's fault. And you kind of see that in Catch Me If You Can, like him, like finally coming to terms with not being mad at his dad. But
Okay, that
this
sounds
is
juicy. What were the deets? Like what happened?
okay.
Oh,
So
spill the tea.
Yeah,
Spielberg's mom had an affair with a family friend.
Oh, yikes.
But instead of like revealing that to Spielberg and his sisters, the dad's like, I'm going to leave. We're getting a divorce and you'll raise the children. And
Well, that's
so
kind of messed up still. I mean,
It
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 is
could have
kind of
been in their
messed
uh-huh.
up,
life.
but he didn't want to
He didn't instigate it, I guess.
reveal
Yeah.
the drama, but to, Steven Spielberg, he's like, well, my dad just left, they divorced. And like he was still a part of their lives, but he wasn't at home anymore. He didn't go to Mexico though.
Yeah.
Well, oh, okay. So, I mean, if he stayed in their life, yeah, that does seem unfair that she might have painted him negatively. I don't know. That's
But
weird.
it was
But
by his choice.
It was
yeah.
yeah, I mean a lot of it is kind of messed up. Um I yeah, I guess that was something I definitely hit that kind of hit with me cuz I'm a child of divorce too and being raised by my mom. But yeah, but kind of going back to Stranger Things. Stranger Things was I've said this in different tweets and on Facebook. It's basically one huge love letter to both Steven Spielberg and Stephen King.
Of
yeah.
course. Yeah.
Yep. I
Like,
And
mean,
what's
yeah, the
funny is, oh, go ahead.
go
I
ahead,
haven't seen the
Lisa.
fourth season yet. I
Oh,
plan
so good.
to, but I still remember that one scene from the fourth season where everybody's riding on their bikes and it looks like they're about to, you know, do a shout out to ET, but it flips everything on its head, especially that van.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
mention that, like especially the ET vibe, like them being
Yeah,
chased on their bikes, and then her flipping the van. I was like ET. I stood up. I was like, oh, I see it. I see it.
yeah.
I'm kind of grateful to Stranger Things for bringing a lot of stuff like this back into the pop culture consciousness because I remember when Stranger Things first aired, I had some friends that were younger than me and some of my friends like siblings that were even younger that were saying stuff like, "Oh, Stranger Things reminds me of Goosebumps and what was the other thing they said? Uh, the X-Files." And I was like,
Oh,
I mean, I guess I get what you're saying, but no, it is 100%, John Carpenter, Steven Spielberg, Stephen King, like that's where the influence is coming from. But
all
for
all
them,
those
that
all
stuff
those
had kind of
'80s greats.
yeah, and by the time this came out, like a lot of that stuff had kind of gone away. Like, people weren't making a bunch of Stephen King stuff anymore, and I really credit Stranger Things for bringing a lot of this stuff back. I mean, since then we've had like re-releases with ET, and I feel like more people are seeing it now than ever. And I think a lot of that is thanks to that nostalgia bomb that the Duffers brothers made. Like
Yeah.
I'm so happy that younger generations get to experience all this stuff.
Not only that, and that's true Stephen King vibe. All the kids on Stranger Things, they act like kids. Those are the
Yeah.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
kids that I would expect kids to act, because that's how I remember acting when I was about that age.
Well, and
Yeah.
if you'll notice too, the way he filmed it is from like all the adults. You see them from the keys down, basically. Um,
Yeah.
you see them
Well,
from the point of view of a child.
I gotta say, I love that reveal of Peter Coyote's character, even though I don't think it's a very, original character name because you see the keys. But I love how you think he's gonna be this ominous character because you just see him walking around with the keys attached to his pants, right? And then
Is this
it's
the?
a
Oh yeah. We're going back to ET. I
yeah.
thought you were about to
So
spoil me for a second.
no, 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 no.
No,
Oh
This
no
is
no, no.
ET.
spoilers.
No spoilers on Stranger Things. But and then he turns
Thank
out to
you.
be a nice guy. Like, like he just wants to see an alien too. Like,
Yeah, very very
I'm
much
surprised
so.
he didn't on the hog farm. Peter Coyote, he's had a wild past. Very 60s.
What's actually one thing that also gets me is the empathic relationship that develops between ET and Elliot.
Hmm.
yeah.
Like ET starts trying beer and Elliot gets drunk.
So when
Yep.
do you think that match happens? Like when do you think that? Do you think it's a constant like when they first
I
met
think it
type of
just
thing? Was it
developed.
when?
I think it just developed over time. It's
Right.
Yeah.
kind of like, uh, well, I don't want to. It's probably a poor comparison, like between any bond between an animal and their human.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
essentially, this movie is a boy and his dog, really,
Yeah.
except the dog is an alien.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say we were watching it the other day, and when the mom is like, "Okay, Gertie," when they're in the kitchen, and she's like, "Look, he's right here," and she hits him with the fridge door, and he falls back, and
Oh,
then they call about um, Elliot being drunk at school, and she turns around and is like, "Okay, Gertie, I gotta go pick up Elliot. Are you gonna be okay here? You know, by yourself, just watch TV." And I'm like, yeah, there's no way that would fly today. Me and Lizzie just looked at each other and she goes, "Would you feel comfortable leaving your kids that age at home by themselves, even if it is just 10 minutes down the road?" And I'm like, hell no.
I mean, the
yeah.
'80s, it was a different time because I was,
Yeah,
just
I'm going
watching
to
this
leave
movie. I'm
all the
wondering,
doors
like,
open. You can stay here and watch TV.
how I mean, I don't know, maybe in smaller towns this still kind of goes on, but do we really see like a gang of kids on their bikes like biking all over town anymore? Like,
Yeah,
I,
Oh,
s-
not
I live in
not
Fort
really.
Worth and I still see that, uh, but it's not so much a gang of kids, more like one, maybe two.
Yeah, I
yeah.
had, until we
And
moved out into the country, like our neighborhood, there were about 3 or 4 kids that we'd ride around up and down the roads and stuff. But
and
yeah, I
also
mean,
this is
I guess we
probably
don't
one of
see
the
that.
worst heat waves in the history of ever.
oh,
Yeah.
for
So,
sure right now no one should be doing it. I was just saying
yeah.
in general
Well,
cuz I remember, and I lived in a really small town, but like I went all over that town. Like it was a town of like maybe 400 or 500 people, but I went to like just biked or walked to the gas station. Like no big deal. You come home when you come
Yeah,
home.
my,
I
Yeah.
think that a lot of that ended with if you ever watch like a documentary about like the milk carton kids, how they used to put children's faces on the back of milk cartons, and how that actually ended up being a bad thing. Number one, it didn't save kids, like it didn't lead to more children being found that were abducted. Because a lot of children that are abducted are not abducted by strangers. Usually they're family members or someone that they know. So they
Yeah.
it's still
Mhm.
this fear in all these parents that, oh, your kid's just going to be like picked up off the street and stolen, and scared a bunch of parents into taking their kids off their bikes, when in reality they're probably pretty safe because that almost never happens. But the psychological effect of seeing those children on those milk cartons, really, I think that echoes to today, you know.
Well, for sure,
Yeah.
but I think it's funny, like parents of the 70s, 80s, and maybe even the 90s to an extent is like, don't talk to strangers. Oh, you're gonna wander around town all day? Okay, just be back for dinner.
Well, well,
Yeah. That's
my parents owned a business right off the square in Rusk, and we would go up there, especially in the summer, and they would bring our bikes in the truck, and they would be like, "Okay, well, don't stay out of the road and don't do anything you're not supposed to." We're like, "Oh yeah, sure," and then take off, and we'd be all over Rusk just on our bikes. I mean, everywhere, like crawling up onto the roof of the TJ Rusk Hotel downtown and the
Oh
newspaper
my
office,
gosh. Live
like
dangerously.
speeding across the footbridge.
apparently, yeah. Wow.
And it was wild kind of back then. And this was early 90s, it's early mid 90s.
I
Yeah.
got
But
dropped off at the mall a lot. My dad, I think, thought I was safe at the mall for some reason. Didn't think I could be abducted there. I don't know why. But he
yeah,
A
would just
very crowded place.
yeah, he would
No,
be like,
no.
"You're not allowed to walk around or ride your bike, but I'm gonna drop you off at this giant mall and leave for hours with, no
right.
cell phones or anything back then, and just hope you're
Oh,
still here." Like, I don't know.
I
oh,
remember
I
getting
would
dropped
bike.
off at
I would
Gremlins
bike to
2.
the mall Saturday mornings, and the video arcade there. They would have this thing where it was like several hours of free play, but you paid in $5, and you'd spend your Saturday mornings. I spend my Saturday mornings playing, Mortal Kombat or that Terminator 2 arcade shooter or
Oh
Art of
yeah.
Fighting or it base like that was a good time.
I
Off
remember
topic.
spending a lot of times at arcades with no money and just kind of walking around and looking around and like looking for quarters on the floor and stuff like that when I ran out of money.
Oh,
Yeah, I would go
actually, the funny
steal
thing
out
is
quarter dispensers.
they kind of brought that back now because
Yeah.
there are these arcade. You could play a lot of old school arcade games and get drinks and get food.
And
Like
everyone
you
there's
pay,
like our age because we
yeah,
remember that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and the DJ would be blasting 80s music.
I went to one in Richardson a couple of years ago for my birthday because we have really good friends, and
Was
a
it free
friend of
play?
ours. I don't know. It was a nickel arcade, but a friend of mine, she
Oh,
has a birthday like
Nickelmania.
two days before me, so we always usually get together for our birthdays, and that we went to that, and like it had all these pinball machines and stuff, and it was great.
Nice.
I mean, a
Nickelmania,
bunch
if it
of.
was that one, has been there since I was a child. Like, it
Well, I
was a
mean, there were
thing when
most.
I was a kid.
Oh, so
It's
you're in
mostly there were
DFW?
still mostly
Yeah, I'm
kids
in
there, but
Dallas.
here we are, people in our mid-30s, like, yeah, video.
Yeah.
I don't want the convenience of on my phone or at home. I want to spend money. I want to leave my house and go somewhere else.
I miss
Oh,
arcades.
my one of my favorite moments was finally getting to play the four-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and
Oh
actually having
yeah,
four people to do it.
Nice. We used to hit that up at Mazio's in Jacksonville.
yeah.
But
You guys remember? I know we're getting on an arcade tangent, but do you remember that
It's important.
Uncanny X-Men game that was
The
based off that?
six-player.
Yeah, that was based off that
yeah,
pilot they never made a series out of.
Yes, yes.
nice. I remember
Of
that.
course, I always played Wolverine. Nowadays, I
I
probably
like
play as
Wolverine.
Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler had like the best moves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you follow any of the one up arcades, the mini arcades, they
Yeah.
re-released. They're releasing all those classic arcades. They have the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
bought the
A
kids.
friend of mine actually has that in their house.
Oh,
Well, what's
nice.
great is it's Wi-Fi, so you can sync up and play with someone else that has the arcade. Like,
Oh, that's a good idea.
Ooh.
That's
yeah,
cool.
they
Bringing it
started
into 2022.
right, and I picked the kids up like the last two Christmases. I've gotten them a little mini arcade because you can find them, especially around Christmas. People will put them up and they're used, and you can get them at a good deal. So I picked up Pac-Man and was it Space or Missile Command or Space Invaders? I don't know. It's a multi-cade that has like Centipede and stuff like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, they're neat. They're neat.
Well, of
But
course, remember those back then when they came out, those graphics were state of the art at the time, especially with TMNT and with both of those games. But though they were cutting edge graphics now, and now you could just um, fit them enough into an emulator.
Yeah.
Like the technology is just increased exponentially. But going back to our uh, getting back on topic and keeping it on video games, I actually played the ET video game for Atari. I actually
oh
played it.
wow,
It's as terrible as everyone says.
I have a cartridge. I have a cartridge saved that I found at a flea market.
I was gonna say, aren't
Oh
these
my
all
god!
like
Do you know
buried
if
in
it
New
works?
Mexico?
Yeah. There's a mass grave. There's a mass grave somewhere that they just dumped them all in. But I remember I found a cartridge and it works. I picked it up with Pitfall, Superman, and Empire Strikes Back. Um,
They made a Superman game for Atari.
yes, and it's horrendous.
Okay,
That's a whole
I
nother
never
episode.
had an Atari. The first thing I had was a Nintendo.
Yeah,
I had
same.
actually I didn't have an actual Atari. I had one of those knockoffs that you got from Sears that played Atari games.
Oh man, Sears. So weird to think
Yes,
how important Sears used to be.
yes.
Put on your Sunday best, kids. We're going to Sears. That line always cracks me up. That's from the
See,
Brady Bunch movie. If you guys ever.
yeah, Sears is where my mom and aunt got like hardware stuff, like fridges and
Yeah,
stuff.
everything.
Like,
Hmm.
but we got our clothes from J.C. Penney.
Yeah.
J.C. Penney and Dillard's. Yep.
Like my aunt actually had a J.C. Penney credit card.
Oh yeah, a lot of people did.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, I didn't realize this at the time, but of course, back then women weren't allowed to have credit cards. Banks wouldn't let
Wow.
women have them. So, what J.C. Penney did is they got their own credit card system. So, because they know
They were
that
like, we
women
want
are
their
the ones
money.
who did a lot of the shopping. So they
Right.
made their own credit cards for women to apply, and that's how they were able to build their own lines of credit.
That is so dark, but that must be why so many women had J.C. Penney cards. This is literally their
Yes,
only option. Wow, that is really
yes,
interesting.
Jeez.
that is
Look at
exactly
JC
why.
Penney taking advantage of the patriarchy.
Yeah, they're like, we want your money. We don't care.
Yeah, like
Please spend
they
all your
know that
credit here.
women do basically all of the shopping.
Yeah, it makes sense. Wow. And especially with like we were talking about earlier, like people shifting from, two parent to single parent households. I mean, that's a
Hmm.
huge part of the market they're cutting out. So makes sense to
Yeah,
take advantage of it.
Getting back to the movie,
Yeah.
I think
See what this
another
movie does to us?
yes, it makes us
takes you down a
remember.
rabbit hole of nostalgia. Um,
Yeah,
besides ushering in Steven Spielberg as a brand name and not just a movie director, I think even though this is very much, it was a blockbuster, it was the biggest movie of 1982, and I believe it was the highest grossing movie of all time till Star Wars was re-released.
Right.
yeah, there would be. Yeah, it's like it was always this chase between Star Wars and ET.
But you know what? Good for them for being good sports because they would always put something in the paper, like a congratulatory message in the paper for each other. Like,
Yeah.
congratulations, buddy. Your movie has topped Jaws, and more power to you. So I always
Hmm.
thought that was like the best example of I guess, friendship and good sportsmanship.
Yes. Actually, I remember when Star Wars was re-released, there was a blurb that Steven Spielberg put up with E.T. giving a crown to R2D2 because
Oh,
after Star Wars was re-released, it beat out E.T. for highest grossing of all time.
Makes sense.
but I think this ushers in, and Spielberg says this himself, even though it's another decade before critics really deem him this. But I think this is his first mature film, and like this is the beginning of him making deeper movies than just because as great as Jaws and Close Encounters and Raiders are, they're blockbusters. I mean, Close Encounters
They're
is a
fun
little more.
adventure movies. It's
I mean, Close Encounters is a little more than Jaws and Raiders as far as themes, but this is where
Absolutely love
he's
that movie.
this is where he starts to make, like, I guess, quote unquote more serious type of movies. And even though this gets lumped in as a summer blockbuster, I think this is really the beginning of him maturing as a filmmaker.
oh yeah. I mean, uh, actually seeing his movies from the 80s and seeing one of his more contemporary movies, like say Lincoln. Like Lincoln is a complete um, you that Spielberg um, his taste how his taste have shifted as a filmmaker because a lot I often joke that a lot of those movies were basically love letters to the Saturday morning serials that he and George Lucas watched when they were children, but he got into, I think it um I wouldn't say I guess I'd say Schindler's List kind of kicked that off, like,
Yeah.
and started making a lot more thoughtful, more definitely more mature movies like Catch Me If You Can or Munich or Lincoln. Oh,
For sure. Because, I mean, if you look at when he goes back and makes like a quote unquote Steven Spielberg movie that people grew up liking and wanting, they're not as interesting. And even his more genre stuff like Minority Report or War of the Worlds, like
Oh, I
there's
love
Ready
more
Player
Minority
going
One.
on.
Report.
There's more going on there than just blockbuster flair.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Ready Player One is probably the one that comes to mind on that because, that's a huge love letter to geek culture. But even then, um,
It's got to be kind of weird directing a movie that's all about referencing your impact on pop culture.
And the fact that it didn't really hit, the fact that people didn't respond to it the way he expected them to.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like because he doesn't really like he understands the impact he had on film culture, but I don't think he understands the impact gaming culture had on the culture. And so
Oh
when
Yeah.
he
yeah.
tried to make a movie about that, people are like, "I feel like you don't understand it." Or at least
Rob.
that's how I felt watching it. But I
Well,
still
but
liked it.
I was thinking, well, the ET video game came out, right? I guess about a year after the movie came out, and it led to that big video game crash, and then the advent of the NES kind of propped it back up, and it was on an upward swing ever since. And honestly, I don't think Spielberg ever played Nintendo.
I
Well,
think he did play
he
Nintendo, but he might have not played past that because I think, or maybe they were still Atari then, because I think that's one of the
Atari,
things him
yeah.
and
he,
Kate
he
Capshaw did, as, like when they were working on Temple of Doom, was
When
playing
Oh,
he's
video games.
Spielberg was actually a video game enthusiast. He had several arcades in his office. He actually, going back to uh, E.T. and the kids, they actually, was it C. Thomas Howell that came out here recently and was like, yeah, he got all the kids together to play D&D at Harrison Ford's house.
oh wow.
And
Oh, I didn't know
Speaking
that.
that's
of
how they
Harrison
got
Ford,
all of them to bond. And
did you?
they
Oh,
just
that's
played
cool.
D&D together and video games and arcades and stuff. So
Oh, shut
Did
me
you know
up then.
Harrison Ford was supposed to be the school principal, but they cut the scene out?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that
Wow.
scene, you can actually find that on YouTube, I believe.
I guess I should rephrase what I said too in the sense that he probably understands gaming culture when it was new, but I don't feel
Yeah.
like
Right.
he understands it now because I doubt he's still playing games.
Y-
But
Yeah,
I think
Yeah,
Ready
doubt.
Player One fails at capturing 80s nostalgia in a way that Stranger Things is able to completely tap into and make accessible. And I think that's interesting that like Steven Spielberg wasn't able to recapture that nostalgia, but an outsider is able to figure out what younger generations would connect to.
Well,
right.
that you can usually tell how old the people in Hollywood are that are making like these coming of age stories or these
Yeah.
nostalgic by the time period the movie takes place in.
Yes.
Hmm.
And so I'm guessing, I don't know how old the Duffer brothers are, but I'm guessing they are either younger Gen X or older millennials. So they were of that age when that stuff, or they grew up on that. So, that's
I
part of.
I will say older millennials. I think they're twins, actually.
Yeah, and I feel like, when Steven Spielberg, he made West Side Story, and I feel like that movie is very well received and people really connect to that. That's closer to his childhood, you know?
Right, because that's from
Yes.
because he's a baby boomer and
Right. So
he's
he
like one of the early baby boomers, and this came out when
Hmm.
the original film came out when he was a teenager.
yeah, he's better
Yeah.
able to sell that nostalgia because he relates to it. But when he tries to sell 80s nostalgia, it's like, well, you were an adult at the top of your game. Like it's not quite the same.
Yeah. And also, I'm glad you mentioned West Side Story because um, I saw the original West Side Story um, like years ago when I was a teenager, and I saw Steven Spielberg's new version. I actually like the new version. I
Yeah,
like,
I think
yeah,
so
Yeah, it's
too.
it's
phenomenal.
they they weren't afraid to tap into the overt racism that
Mhm.
was that the original movie it kind of glossed over it, like it was there but it wasn't it didn't feel quite as ugly
Right.
Right.
as the newer versions did. And also I like the fact that a lot of the Puerto Ricans speak Spanish to each other,
And
like
Mhm.
and there's no
they're actually Latino Hispanic actors.
They're not just like
Yeah.
yes.
tan white people. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Rita Moreno was actually in the original
Right,
version,
That's
yeah.
true. She
but
was.
and then she got recast as Tony's mom, and oh my God, her song, like
Mhm.
she's in her 90s and she could still kill it. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a great film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole Oscar debacle of whatever, but it was really touching for her to be there and Ariana DeBose to win an Oscar for playing the same role she won an Oscar for 60 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to remember anything from the Oscars this year because of what happened, but you're right.
I honestly don't pay attention to the Oscars anymore, mainly because of this. Remember Saving Private Ryan? Everyone was
Ah,
expecting
Oh
that
yeah.
movie to basically sweep every award. But Harvey Weinstein ran a smear campaign against that movie, saying it wasn't really that historically accurate, so that
Ugh,
Shakespeare in Love would win. So yeah, one
nobody
more
even
reason
saw
to hate
Shakespeare in
Harvey
Love.
Weinstein.
well, there's plenty of reasons to hate Harvey Weinstein besides
Yeah.
the
Like I said,
obvious
one
reasons.
more.
Yeah.
One
No, but
more.
yeah, I remember when that happened. You're so right. And I mean, it's just so obvious and so, clear the bias. And plus, like, no war movie is historically accurate. That's so ridiculous anyway. Like,
Yeah, this is Saving Private Ryan is the movie that sent World War II veterans into flashbacks.
yeah, I mean, it was accurate enough.
Yeah, I remember hearing stories. Sorry, my dog. Go
Oh, no,
ahead.
you're fine.
Go
The
ahead.
first time that I saw it in theaters, I remember, like, I was truly horrified. I think that was the first time I'd ever seen a war movie that was that graphic, and it was
Yeah,
truly unsettling to me. I think just the age that I saw it at, I was so young that I was like, I think it occurred to me for the first time, like, wow, war is really horrible.
yeah,
Hmm.
and with I was 18 when that movie came out, and I saw that opening scene in my 20s, and that yeah, that it messed me up then. So it's not just I mean, it wasn't just your age. Like, yes, war really is that rough.
Hmm.
Also, going off on another tangent, fun little fact: James Doohan, who we all knew as Scotty from Star Trek, he was Normandy Beach on D-Day.
I didn't know that.
Oh
I remember when
wow.
he passed away, and I was at like a convention, and they played like
Yeah,
the
Oh wow. He actually got
remembrance
shot
reel.
several times and had
he
his
lost a
finger,
finger in the war.
had his finger
Oh
blown off.
Dang.
dang.
I
Yeah,
didn't know he was that hard.
A cigarette case that his brother had given him saved his life, and it stopped a bullet from getting him in the chest.
Why haven't they made a movie about this?
He was a
Right?
badass.
Scotty
yeah.
really is a badass.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think he landed with Canadian forces on one of the beaches and took out several snipers and then took like 4 or 5 hits.
Wow.
Oh, actually, I just looked it up. The Duffer Brothers, born February 15th, 1984. So they are
Oh wow, they're
38
like
years
They're
literally
old.
like
my
our
age.
age. That's so
Okay.
crazy.
Wow. Well, for only. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
If
I
my
wasn't
kid
gonna
was
say.
here, she'd be barking too.
Yeah, but yeah, they're 38 years old. So they were in those formative years. All the stuff so far had come out,
Well, a lot
and
of people, I catch this a lot. We're like, well, you were born in the '80s, but you're not really an '80s kid.
oh
And
God,
I digress because I remember. I mean, although technically we weren't tweens or teens during that era, we were still young enough to remember a lot of it, and especially because I had 3 older sisters, so they were constantly watching MTV or watching the movies that were out at the time. So yeah, I mean, I was still kind of in that range. I mean, I remember a lot of it.
I mean, I think too, like being that young and that impressionable makes the 80s more like nostalgic and happy for me than say the 90s were. When I meet people younger than me that love the 90s, they're like, "Oh, you're so lucky you got to be a teenager in the 90s." I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't love it."
yeah, I
I
was
think
like,
because I was old enough to see like how messed up everything was in the world that the 90s don't feel like the sanitized, rose-colored lens that I have over the 80s.
oh God, I cringe whenever I see younger people wearing Friends T-shirts. I'm like, dude, that sitcom is not as good as you think it is.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
I am baffled by the Zoomers' love of Friends. I was like, I don't even think this was for us. I think this was like for
For our
probably our
parents.
older siblings who were like in their 20s in the 90s, you know?
God,
right.
and
My dad
a
hated
lot of
that
those,
show. He
a
was
lot of the
like, "They're living
characters
in
now are so
sin." They're not it's
Ross
a
is
bunch of
terrible.
friends like
yes.
dating each other. This is sinful. Like at the time Friends came out, that was still kind of like a thing. Like, it was almost like Three's Company, where
Yeah.
people thought
Three's
it was like
Company is way
scandalous.
funnier than Friends. I am
I
sorry.
agree. So is
Right.
Frasier.
Also,
I said it.
I gotta agree with The Good Place. I don't understand how these people can afford apartments in New York.
They certainly
Rent
can't now.
control.
Oh,
But uh,
Well, going back to ET. Sorry, guys.
yes,
right.
Look, you know what? It's
Sorry,
okay
everyone.
because this is the summer of '82 series. So getting off on any tangent about the '80s is totally fine. We've all seen ET,
yes.
a million times. I would like to go back and touch on the fact that ET and Poltergeist were filmed in the same area
At
and
the
at the
same
same time.
time.
And
Yeah,
that
they
is one
came
of
out
my
the same
that,
year, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
they
yeah,
came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they came out the same year,
that
weeks
is
probably, not even a month
No
apart.
wonder Steven Spielberg is such a, amazing director. He comes out with 2 iconic films in one year. That's just
And that's
phenomenal.
Yeah.
not the first or last. Well, it might be the first time, but it's not the last time he does that.
Yeah.
a
Right.
movie he
And
produces and movie he directs. Well, Steven Spielberg produced Poltergeist.
I mean, the man directed Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year.
Oh
Yeah,
God,
it's so
yeah.
insane.
yeah,
I
that's.
love Poltergeist too. That's such a good movie.
Oh, I do
I,
too. And I
I
think after watching it the last time, I'm like, you know what? This is from now on. Poltergeist and ET are going to make a great double feature because
Oh
they're.
yeah.
I
yeah,
mean, even the houses in like after I watched Poltergeist, I went back and watched ET, and I'm like, wow, even the houses, the units have almost the same layout kind of as Elliot's home, and they even have the little window, the octagon, the window at the top that connected the two closets together. I know it's like home layout
Interesting.
and you may not be interested, but I always thought that was cool. Uh, and they both use a lot of Star Wars in the children's rooms with set dressing and stuff. And I don't know, I thought it was really cool.
Well,
yeah.
yeah. And
I
really, I'd say that was a I wouldn't say introduct what it was kind of a showing of what suburban life was like in neighborhoods like that. Because I
True.
mean, I didn't grow up in my commute. Marshall was way too small to be small to and rural to be considered a suburb of anything. But yeah, I had one. I lived in one of those housing developments that was not unlike how it was uh, in ET or Poltergeist.
Interesting. I grew up in apartments, so I was like, man, these people have big houses.
No, my house wasn't really that big. It was just like actually all the houses in there were all one stories, like one stories, probably two or three bedrooms or two bathrooms. Like
Hmm.
it like they weren't that big, but it was um and really, now this I'm going off another tangent here because I'm been house hunting. I miss houses like that. Like
Yeah.
all the houses in my neighborhood were distinct. Like they had their own look. And a lot of the newer housing developments I see being built, all the houses look alike. It's scary. It's like Stepford Wives or something.
Yeah. My house was built in the 70s that we purchased a couple years ago, and I wonder sometimes how much of like growing up and watching, films and watching the houses in film, how much did that influence my purchase? Like sometimes I think it had to have been a reason why I wanted an older home.
Yeah.
If my home, when I buy one eventually, doesn't have the wood paneling on the walls and or any sort of shag carpet, then they can just forget it.
It will probably be painted over like it was in my home. Like I have
oh
Yeah.
my
paint on my
god.
walls, but they literally just painted over wood. You can see the seams where they did it.
Mm,
I mean, I lived in my early childhood before we moved to Kentucky, like from like 2 to 5. We lived in a lot of these kind of suburban homes, so and where you could like just walk all over your neighborhood, like trick or treating, you just walk the block, right? Like they do in the
yeah.
movie. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what you did.
That's what I did too. And then
I
we went
forgot
to
about the
other
trick or treat
neighborhoods,
scene.
but we had to
Yeah,
drive
this
around to get to other neighborhoods because we were
mhm.
so I wouldn't say isolated, but um, everything was just so spread out.
Yeah, for that very reason, a lot of times I see this movie on a list like movies to watch on Halloween or for Halloween or during
Yeah.
Halloween. Um,
Yeah,
I think we have to say, and I'm not trying to say one's better than the other because they're both iconic movies, but I do think the performances in ET are much stronger from the kids, but that's also because it's centered on the children instead
That's
yeah,
of.
true. The Poltergeist is centered on the adults more
Hmm.
and the fear that they go through losing their kids, you
yes,
know,
Right.
which is again, I guess another Stranger Things parallel with Will, being trapped
Hmm.
in another
yeah,
dimension. Yeah, in the first
yeah,
season.
exactly. Like, but
I
in Stranger Things, there was a good balance between the adult stories, the teenager stories, and the kids stories.
That's so
Yeah.
true in a way that like a lot of Stephen King stuff isn't able to duplicate. Like when you watch it, the original it,
Yeah, even
was the
the
70s or 80s, when they do the second half where it's all focused on the adults more, you're like bored. Like it
Nope.
never captures the magic of the first one. And even when they re-released it and they completely separated their ages, because it used to go back and forth when they're teenagers and when they're adults, when they try to completely separate it, even more so, you're like, part one really good, part two it's like there's something about all those kids together. And I think like what you're saying, it kind of is a parallel to the ET and versus Poltergeist. ET is more endearing because I don't know, there's just something about that group of kids that you relate to more.
Oh,
mhm.
I'm speaking of Stranger Things and it. I am becoming convinced that Finn Wolfhard is becoming this patron saint of 80s nostalgia.
Yeah, he really
Because
is.
he got in Stranger Things. He was awesome in Stranger Things. Then he was the nerdy kid in It, and then he got cast in Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Oh, I forgot
Like,
about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
he is like he keeps getting cast in all these 80s throwback movies,
Well,
and
so,
So
so does
it's
interesting.
Sadie Sink. She was in Fear Street, the Fear
Oh,
Street
I
trilogy.
really like
Oh
those
yeah,
Fear Street
mm,
movies. I
which
love those books.
the person who directed that is married to one of the Duffer brothers.
Oh, are you serious? I didn't
oh,
realize
Yeah.
okay.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
it's like it goes to show it's not just what you know, but who you know.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a pretty good
which
connection.
Fear Street is even a deeper cut for older, because mostly people are like Goosebumps, Goosebumps, but he had those string of tween series, the Fear Street novels,
See,
that were
I was of the age where when Goosebumps came out, I liked them, but I read them too quickly. My reading comprehension at that age was above Goosebumps. They were really short novels. So I would read Fear Street because it was the kids were older and, they were teenagers and I was more into that. So when they finally made these Fear Street movies, I was like, yay. No shade to Goosebumps, though. I know lots of
Okay,
fans out
actually,
there.
I've Goosebumps was a little bit past my time. I think I was in my teens when that happened, but around that time, I think I started my King and Crichton phase.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Like
see, yeah, that makes sense.
I read a lot of Stephen King. I definitely like I would go through a Michael Crichton book in a week. I was 13,
Yeah.
but yeah, hmm, going back to the 80s nostalgia and going back to ET, yeah, um, it is, it was kind of a rarity to see uh, kid targeted movies that focused on the kids and had the kids act like kids.
And had them be good
Exactly.
actors too. I
Yeah.
Yes,
mean, because a lot of
yeah,
times that can be almost an afterthought. There's just a cute kid that has catchphrases, isn't
Mhm.
very good at acting. All their lines feel like very mimicked, very like wooden. And these kids have like deep, complex emotions. That how children
yeah,
actually are.
yeah. And Drew Barrymore was is
I mean,
she's
yeah. At what, 7 years old? She's
Right.
already
seven,
like screen
yeah,
presence.
I can see where she, like,
and then she gets cast as Firestarter.
I
Can
still
I
need to
just say I'm
watch
so
that
happy for
version.
her? Like the woman she's become now. Like I think her quirkiness, her out there-ness, like in the 90s and early 2000s, people didn't really appreciate it. And she kind of got like typecast for a while, and also because she struggled with addiction. But now it
Mhm.
Yeah,
feels like everyone's allowed to be their weird, wacky selves, and she's got that show now, and her
right.
personality just comes across as so endearing. And I think how it
Well,
was always meant to. Like I just
what show are you
appreciate
talking
her.
about? I haven't
She
seen.
has a
I
her
haven't.
talk
mom,
show
She has a
now.
talk show where she interviews
Yeah.
people now, and
Oh
she
my
looks
God,
great.
her
Yeah, she
shows
mom,
how
looks
in the loop
so
I
good.
am.
her
Yeah,
mom
you
was
look it
here at
up.
Studio 54 at a young age, and by
Yeah.
13 she was in rehab for drugs and
Well, I mean,
addiction,
it's a family
and
history of addiction problem.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then drinking. She was apparently, like, there's a story where she, I believe she told it, where she was again really young. This is probably after ET at some point, but she was at a party and she said the Brat Pack. She didn't say which member, but apparently she walked over and asked for his beer, and that person gave it to her, and then like slow danced with her. It was real creepy.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh
It
my
was real
God.
creepy,
I think
and
I
then
know who you're talking about too.
set her back
'cause-
down, and then like, well, here you go, here's the beer, and like patted her on the rear end to like scurry along,
Ew.
and it was
Well,
very, yeah, just
and I
It
think it
it was
was so
weird.
hard for women in Hollywood too, like the same, not the same thing, but something happened to poor Drew Barrymore. I feel like it's true. She had all these addiction problems, and obviously it wasn't her fault. She was so young in Hollywood and being introduced to drugs and alcohol at such a young age. But her career and I think her public perception really suffered from all of her addiction in a way that doesn't usually happen to male co-stars. When they overcome addiction, they're like heroes almost. We think of like Robert Downey Jr. and stuff like that. But women have a much harder time recovering from it. Winona Ryder went through kind of a similar thing where, she had that,
Right.
she stole something and had addiction
kleptomania,
issues.
I think.
Yeah. And it's like she suffered from that for years, the perception of that. And
Yeah.
I'm just happy for Drew Barrymore now and for Winona Ryder that they're kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
getting their heyday back, and like they're back in movies, they're back doing things. And I don't know. We all love that little girl from E.T., and it's just sad the way everyone kind of turned on her over the partying. But
Well,
Chris,
I
that
was
is a
just
truly chilling and disturbing story.
well, I was
Yeah, and
I was that kind of makes me go and think because couple of years later, there's another Spielberg movie, kid-centered movie, The Goonies. That was my big one, and of course, that put Corey Feldman into superstardom, and he ended up getting thrown into drugs and alcohol, especially with his friend Corey Haim, who is, of course, no longer with us.
was it
because of it.
was it
Yeah.
I want to say
Yeah.
it was either the Goonies or another film he was on where he got busted for smoking. It was
Probably Lost
either
Boys.
pot or crack.
I don't know. They
I
did
think it was
something
Lost
in
Boys.
Stand By Me where Rob Reiner berated all of them for doing something.
Oh, it was
On
Lost
set.
Boys. He got I mean, not Lost Boys.
Stand by me.
Stand by Me. He got in
Because,
trouble.
River Phoenix is in there too.
Oh
Yeah,
God,
talk about
yeah.
kids with addiction and other issues. My gosh.
And
that whole family.
of course, yeah. Now, Will Wheaton. Yeah, that was Will Wheaton's big catapult into a stardom that he apparently didn't want. And Jerry, and of course, he and Jerry O'Connell. I mean, from what I heard, there's like they're rekindling their friendship now.
Well, now they're both part of the Star Trek family.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right, because he's in Lower Decks.
Yeah.
Jerry O'Connell.
Oh,
So it's
trying to
But-
think. Speaking of Jerry O'Connell, thinking with all these movies now about the multiverse, I'm kind of hoping they reboot Sliders.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I
love
mean, that
Sliders.
would
I
put it in
loved
doubt.
that show.
Yeah, Sliders. Yeah.
But the guy, Henry Thomas, is still a very much active actor. Like, he's in all the Mike Flanagan stuff, like he still works.
No, I didn't even know that because I
Yeah.
heard. Yeah, actually, I think Henry Thomas he had a bit of trouble as well.
Well, he went when he went to film. Was it last year or the year before where they did the ET Christmas commercial?
Yeah.
I know he got busted for drinking and driving when he went to film that, but I haven't heard anything else about him.
Oh
like
dang. But
getting
yeah,
in
I
trouble.
think he's had his share of troubles too. Like a lot of the child actors,
You're
not
right.
just from ET, but from that era.
Well,
had their-
Well,
Robert
I mean-
Robert Naughton, the older brother, he did not. I don't think Hollywood was too kind to him. So I know after ET, I think he left acting or maybe tried and it didn't work out. So he's like a mailman now.
Oh dang.
Wow.
Whoop whoop Well, I mean, that's
You
good.
still got them good
I mean,
benefits.
Government
I mean,
Yeah,
benefits.
there's
that's true.
definitely
You're like, hey, wait a minute. Didn't know
Yeah,
nothing
like
about
I'm
that.
about to go into that profession, and I'm like, good for you, because I hear it's really, really good.
well,
So,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My cousin worked for the post office for years, and yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot of good money.
Oh yeah, I mean, anything like a government type job is a good bet. I mean,
Hmm.
good benefits, good pay. Yep.
And a lot
But
healthier environment than like being a child in Hollywood ever.
yeah.
Oh,
Very
yeah,
good point,
totally.
Lindsay. Very, very good point.
Yeah,
As we've been discussing.
because that didn't just stop in the 80s. I mean, that's gone on and it might sadly still be going on to this
it
day.
it is still going
Oh, it
on. I mean,
is.
there's that one guy who produced all those Nickelodeon kid coms.
Oh
Oh yeah,
yes,
that guy.
That
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah, and
creepy.
because of him, Nickelodeon really started tightening their background checks on all any adult who starts who works for them.
I mean, they should have been doing that in the first place. But
Right.
as
Yeah, no argument there, and not even getting into John Kay, the
no, don't get.
creator of Ren and Stimpy.
Oh
Oh,
yeah. It's such a
Yeah, of course.
bummer.
Of course, it was already known that he was difficult to work with from the beginning, even before we knew all of that, grooming teenagers shit.
Dan Snyder. What's that dude's name?
Yes, that is his name.
Nick Jr.
No, not
Mm,
Nick Jr. That's little kid stress.
No, I know.
no.
I was joking.
But
no.
getting off how creepy and horrible Hollywood treats children actors,
Yes.
I
Yes.
think before we end this discussion, we can't undermine Dee Wallace as the mom, even though this is very centered on the children and how great Henry Thomas and Drew Barrymore and Robert Naughton are as the three children. I think Dee Wallace does a great job here as the mother.
Oh,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes. Like she, mm, she gives off that relatable single. It's like I remember this is kind of how my mom was a few times, just frustrated, frustrated having to do a lot of things by herself, um, but also at the same time, being a mom.
Yeah.
And let's not forget John Williams' score, because
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
without
yes,
that score, I really think he made it believable.
Yeah.
John.
So touching
Like,
and heartfelt, and you know exactly when you hear that, you're like, oh, CT.
man,
Oh,
yeah.
the SFA Orchestra. The Orchestra of the Pines. Um, they did a concert and they opened it with ET. And hearing that live, oh my God,
Oh, I'll bet
uh,
that's one of the best
it's
scores
yeah.
around. I mean, that's up there
Yeah.
again with Indy and Star Wars and so
Jurassic
many
Park.
others.
Yeah.
Right? Yes,
Ac-
Jurassic Park.
Actually, I'm not sure um, what's going on in the smaller community orchestras, but I know a lot of the larger regional orchestras like Dallas and Fort Worth, they started doing this thing where they play scores from the movie live and they show they screen the movie and the orchestra just plays the music live in front of them
Oh,
Yes.
for the
wow.
We went to
audiences.
a Star
Hmm.
Trek show like that here a couple of years, about 4 or 5 years ago, in Dallas, where they did. They were going on tour, and it was a big Star Trek show where they did music from all the shows. It was for the 50th, I believe. So
They
yeah,
also
Yeah.
do. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
They also do the DSO also does like a John Williams Christmas event that I've been to before where they just play
Yeah.
like everything Christmas related that he's ever scored, like Home Alone and
Oh, I was
all
in the
kinds of stuff.
choir. I was in the choir at UT Arlington a couple of years ago, and we opened our choir. We opened our Christmas concert with the concert with the Christmas theme from Home Alone 2 that John Williams did.
Huh.
Nice.
Yeah,
Well,
think
So
we
I,
should do that.
But
I have
yeah,
a
John Williams is the man, and he said that he's officially going to retire
yep.
from film scoring after the next Indiana Jones movie. But I mean, it's not like he's going to retire from music, but he's wanting to do a lot more original compositions and a lot more. Um, I think even though he's retiring from film scoring, the man will still be making music until he dies.
I
Yeah,
can't believe
probably.
he's still going. Like
Right? It's
he's
got
up
Yeah,
to
there.
be.
he's also in his 90s.
Yeah, I was fixing to say if he's not 90, he's pushing it.
96, I think.
Oh wow. Yeah, because I knew
Yeah.
he was quite a bit older than Spielberg.
Man, yeah.
He's gonna be mid-concert conducting, and he's just gonna keel over, and we'll all be like, "Yeah, that was how that was gonna end." Always.
Do not jinx that. You better go bite your tongue, find some wood, and knock on it.
There's some salt over your shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah.
do,
But
does this movie get you guys? Do you get a little teary eyed? And what scene does it for you?
oh, John Williams is 90.
Okay,
Woo!
well,
Okay.
Yeah.
A young 90.
Yeah.
The
Very
whole
spry.
where they're losing ET, that gets me. I mean,
Yeah.
come on,
That stresses me out so much.
Forrest Gump gets me. So
That scene stresses me out so much because I get that a lot is going on, but like, who lets their kids, all of their kids, stand around and be traumatized by this whole thing? Like, everybody's just openly staring into the face of death, even though it's a little white alien.
Yeah.
It's the little kids crying that sets me over the edge. I can't help it. When they cry, I cry. That's just.
yeah, maybe it was like, come on, Gertie,
Well,
let's
that
go
was kind of
get some
the
dolls
Come on, Gertie,
upstairs.
let's go watch this.
to me
Instead of
that was
watching
the
this alien
accumulation
die.
of it. It was for me. It was that part where you could tell that something is wrong, and Elliot says, "Don't worry about it. We're fine."
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As
When he
gut
starts-
wrenching, and as stressful as Lindsay pointed out that scene is the scene that usually gets me and got me the last time I watched it yesterday was the goodbye scene with the kids
Aw.
and even the dog goes up to the spaceship. Like even the dog is like sad.
Did
You totally
okay?
can hear
Did
it.
any of you hear about the proposed, like the sequel that never got made?
Yes.
Yes, there was going to be a
No.
sequel to
Wasn't
E.T.
it going to be a horror movie?
Something
Sort
like
of.
that, because they meet a bunch of like evil. They get taken out into space, and they meet a bunch of evil ETs.
Man, that's all.
Yeah,
collectively-
I'm kind of glad that never got off the planning stages, because that really would have negated the heartfeltness of this movie.
Right.
Yeah, that would have like totally poo-pooed on what this movie was all about and what it means to everybody that loves this movie. And my other question for you guys is this is at the time period like we talk about. I said, that I think this is like the beginning of Spielberg maturing. This was nominated for Best Picture. I think this is the Academy was still actively at this time trying to find like the popular movie that the critics also liked and they would throw in there.
Yeah.
Did not win. Loses to Gandhi. As far as I know, I've never seen Gandhi on the AFI list of 100 greatest movies ever made. This one's made the list both times. Has anyone seen Gandhi? And if you have, do you?
So did
I
they-
have not. I
they-
know about it, but I have not seen it. But this also makes is kind of getting me back into that whole I don't pay attention. Another reason why I don't pay attention to the Oscars, because really it does. I mean, it's not so much it's so political, but also a lot of those movies that end up winning all of the awards and all of the acclaim, they don't really stand the test of time. Very few of those Oscar winners actually do. I mean, the original Rocky, that won Best Picture, and of course, it spawned a whole bunch of sequels and is part of the popular consciousness, but want to go all the way back to going back, and Citizen Kane was nominated for Best Picture
and lost.
Yeah,
A
it
lot
lost,
of the
and
Best Picture noms in particular, and a lot of the winners are the ones that
thanks
are
to
remembered the
a smear.
least.
Oh, sorry, Lisa.
Oh no, I was just saying the Best Picture ones in particular. That specific win is usually very
Yeah,
controversial. Like, and a lot of them don't stand the test of time.
yeah, and it was thanks to a smear campaign by William Randolph Hearst, because
Of
Citizen
course,
Kane
because
was a
About him,
very
yeah.
veiled,
yeah,
you know,
they still got a
biography of
screenplay
him.
Oscar.
But like, who has ever seen How Green Was My Valley? Because that was the one that beat out Citizen Kane.
People who
Yeah.
really love John Ford, I guess. I
I
However,
haven't seen
some
guess,
of the
him.
but
winners I do really like. Like I thought Parasite was really good. I actually really like
Yes.
yes,
Nomadland.
Parasite is good. Like um uh that was a movie that definitely kept me guessing.
Yeah, there's like
Also, in the
Birdman
commentary
and
between the class divides and everything,
yeah.
but that's an actual good movie. And really, there are a few things that I do pay attention to, because I don't think it's as political. But I look at the best screenplay winners,
Ah.
because those are the
Mm.
ones that actually pay attention to a movie's story and a movie's writing. Like L.A. Confidential won, it won Best Adapted Screenplay in that year, and
The year
it's really,
Titanic won everything. Yeah.
yeah, and L.A. Confidential is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's a good film.
Same.
I'm
It's
Yeah,
looking
great.
back through a bunch of winners.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think I've seen Gandhi, but it's been such a long time.
I
And
have
I'm not
never
gonna
seen
knock
Gandhi.
Gandhi. I've
Did,
never seen it.
did they?
And
I have never seen it, and I was going to ask this earlier. Did they put the part? Did they put? Did they put in the movie where he would sleep next to underage
No, they
girls
didn't, because
to test his
they
piety?
didn't.
I mean, I know Ben Kingsley won an Oscar as well that year, and nine
Yeah,
times out of 10, even if I don't love the movie, usually the Best Picture winner is fine. It's not like there's very few times where I'm like, well, that was just a bad movie, but like usually they're just fine, you know.
yeah,
But
Yeah.
there's usually something that was nominated where you're like, well, you totally misread the room.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, kind of funny you mentioned that, because I always kind of noticed that anytime someone wins a Best Actor Oscar, the next movie that comes out with them in it is like freaking terrible.
That does
Like, it's
happen a
god
lot.
awful. Like, Halle Berry, she
Uh huh.
won for Monsters Ball, and her
And then
next movie was Catwoman.
Oh dear.
oh no, Die Another Day. The
That's
That
true.
James
was
Bond movie
Those are
she
called
did.
palate cleanser movies. They
And
want to show
then
you they can be really good and really terrible. You never know.
Catwoman came
and
out when I worked at the Jacksonville Theater, and we would preview movies on Thursday nights, and that is one of the only movies that I ever previewed where I wanted to just get up and walk out. I remember falling asleep. I remember
I
falling
guess I
asleep.
was
call-
young enough to appreciate that movie, because I remember liking it. I remember, like, when it started to come on TV, I would try to catch it.
I
Well,
call Catwoman the movie that makes Batman and Robin feel better about itself.
wow.
Aw.
Oh yeah.
I've actually never seen Catwoman, but I know the 1-2 punch of that and Elektra was such the reason that they wouldn't greenlight a female-driven superhero movie for so long.
Maybe they
I
should
would
Yeah.
stop
rather,
and make those movies, and they would be better.
I would rather watch
Oh,
Electra.
and
Exactly.
Jamie Foxx, he won. Actually, he was one of those few actors that got nominated for Best Lead Actor and Best Supporting Actor at the same time. But he
Yeah,
won. He won Best
Ray
Lead
and
Actor for
Collateral.
Ray. His next movie was Stealth.
Yeah.
That was.
I mean,
That's the only movie I was tempted to get up and walk out of, because, well, first of all, there's like these scenes that are completely pointless that have him and the other two lead actors shirtless.
that
Well, I mean,
was
if
for
you
like,
some,
see
that
it's
was
Top
for a
Gun,
like-
certain group of people, and it
Yeah.
probably
was
wasn't about
it
the plot at all.
Top Gun
Jessica
first.
Biel and I forget who the white dude was.
everybody forgets who the white dude was.
Is it Josh Lucas? Was it that? Is it not Matthew McConaughey? That's what my wife calls him.
I don't know, but all I know is Jamie Foxx dies like in the second act.
I'm pretty sure they revealed that in the trailer. I've never seen the movie.
No, they didn't. They didn't, because they were trying so hard to get people who were Jamie Foxx fans to go see that movie. But oh my god! And then Reese Witherspoon, she won for Walk the Line, and her next movie was like Far From Heaven.
Mm.
It was like this Ghost Dad knockoff, and like you're kind of going for the bottom of the barrel when the movie you're aping is Ghost Dad.
In defense of these actors' choices, a lot of times these movies are filmed before the movie comes out. So, like, I'm sure all these movies they signed on before their Oscar-winning performances came out or knew how those movies are going to do.
Well, a lot of them have to do with contracts too. Like they'll sign on.
I am not blaming. Well, it's like
one or two movies.
I remember Halle Berry when she won her Razzie after she won her Oscar, and she accepted it personally. She thanked her agent, who tells them to read the scripts next time.
Well, that's what happened with Bruce Willis. He did The Kid and was supposed to do 2 more movies for Disney, and he refused, and he had to come back and do The Sixth Sense because of that.
The Kid was shot before The Sixth Sense?
Oh, yeah.
Because The Kid came out after The Sixth Sense, so that's interesting.
It was some movie. It may not have been I thought I heard that it was The Kid, but he was supposed to do 3 movies for Disney, and he backed out of the last 2. He filmed 1 and decided he wasn't going to do the other 2, and they were like, well, during negotiations, he was like, okay, well, I'll do this movie called The Sixth Sense, which ended up being a huge success. So a lot of it, again, has to do with contracts. They'll get roped into something, and they're like, "Oh, well, okay, let's do this Oscar-winning performance, and I guess I'll do Ghost Dad, part 2."
Oh, okay. Actually, kind of going back to the whole thing, you mentioned this earlier, Cody, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about it. Mac and Me, the big ripoff.
No, that's
Wasn't it a McDonald's tie-in too?
Yes, there was that scene with an impromptu dance number in the middle of McDonald's.
and Coca-Cola brings them to life. Coca-Cola.
Yeah, that's his favorite drink.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I remember my dad renting that and bringing it home because, again, I was like, okay, it's E.T. And I remember him putting it on. I was like, what the hell is this? Even as a little kid.
I think the only way to watch Mac and Me is to watch like the riff tracks or whatever the way we watched it. Like you can't watch that movie without somebody there to help you make fun of it.
I watched that movie on cable. It was in repeats on cable. I think there was this I watched they have some of the clips now, and the running joke is, it's like the guys in the suits chasing them. Are they government agents or are they Steven Spielberg's lawyers?
and Paul Rudd's Conan joke.
That's the best part of
gag for years. He shows clips of Mac and Me.
Yeah, it was like 15 or 20 years that he just did that continuously. Like,
isn't he also one of the people that talks about The Room all the time too?
Maybe so.
I don't know. I haven't really followed. I really don't follow actors, either private lives or public personas as much as I just want to see the movies they're doing. I really don't follow celebrity gossip as much as I used to.
It's worth looking up on YouTube, a compilation of all the times that Paul Rudd has punked Conan with that clip, because he even did it on his very last show.
Yeah,
and there's been a couple times where he's gotten other actors to do it to Conan. So
Very
that's
funny.
the best part of Mac and Me.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's making the movie live on.
So
Well,
Be-
guys. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead,
go.
Cody.
Well, I was going to do the same thing you were about to do. I was going to say, is there anything else before we
Yeah.
finish this one? Like, what do we? Do you have any
The
final
train,
thoughts on what you
the
love
train
about
left the
this
track a
movie?
long time ago, but it's okay.
I would really like if anybody watches or listens later, or any of you three, if you have like nominations for like, I don't want to say hot because I don't want to objectify anybody, but like cool parents of 80s movies, like the mom from E.T. has it going for her. She's a pretty cool mom. Like Nick said, I remember like my mom being single and that kind of being like, whatever, here's a pizza, and then not
Yeah.
seeing each other for like 72 hours out, like because of school and work and stuff. The fact that she is like a cool mom, but she also didn't realize there was an entire alien in her house for way too long. Like
Right. The parents from Poltergeist are pretty cool. Like
the parents from and see, when I was a kid, I never remembered like looking at the parent. They looked old to me because I was little.
Sure.
But now that I'm a parent and I'm old, I'm like, I really appreciate those parental figures in media now a lot more.
But
yeah,
maybe part of it's because we're that age now. But I think people in general looked older back then because they all smoked
There-
and drank.
Right?
there
Okay.
is a video about that. How people back then, it's like people in certain time periods, they looked older, and yeah, a lot of it does have a lot to do with nutrition and
The culture around like healthy habits.
Well, and I
Yes.
think too, like the now we live in an era where we're allowed to express ourselves and look however we want. But I feel like back then it used to be like once you hit X age, you dress like it, and
Yeah,
and also they're dressing like their heyday, which makes them look older. Like if we continue dressing like we did as teenagers, even though we think it makes us look younger people are like, you look old.
It dates us.
Yeah.
yeah.
Why do you still have a wallet chain, bro? It's not the 90s anymore.
Why are you parting your hair on the side?
Okay, in
Yeah.
that defense, I have seen kids with wallet chains, but then they're the types who would just leave their stuff lying around. It's like so they need something to hold on to
I was
that.
actually
So
fascinated by that whole thing here maybe a year ago about how kids, high schoolers,
Our
and
fashion's
movies
coming back, baby. We don't have to
look
buy any new
older.
clothes now.
how they looked older. So I got on YouTube and I found some home videos of kids in classrooms around the mid to late 80s, and these dudes are walking around with like full grown mustaches and like long hair, like getting ready to leave school to go work on their their 86 Trans Am or something.
Oh, yeah.
Work at a factory for
Drink
40
a couple
years.
beers with the
good
guys.
God,
And then I passed the school today, and I'm like, oh, they're babies.
They're
all like,
children.
yeah. And then you look at some
I
of the
was
older
lucky to get
videos.
a small goatee when I at the end of my high school years. I mean, I could barely now grow a full beard, but yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with due to a lot of nutrition. People just plain age better than they have been, but also at the same time, it does have to do with how we dress and how we carried ourselves. Because one of my old, I actually saw a picture of one of my old college roommates. He is about a year or two younger than I am. Bald head, like as one of those, how it's bald and it's just the little patches of hair around the side.
Oh, Lord,
yeah.
he's got a
Yeah,
horseshoe.
the whole male pattern baldness thing. But here I am with salt and pepper hair, and I turned 42 a couple of months ago. So
Rub it in, because some of us don't. Nick, no, I'm just playing. I'm just joking.
yes, I still have a full head of hair. But
Mine's down to my shoulder. Mine's down past my shoulders, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna rock it until it starts falling out.
Yeah.
No. I lost my hair somewhere in the Bush administration and never found it back, so
Huh.
I just embraced it.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
Yeah,
Um,
actually, I knew like there was a running joke. My band director in high school, he never his hair was completely white, and I started going gray around my 20s, and I said, yeah, I'm gonna be him. um, Later on, yeah, I'm in my 40s now, and all my head's almost white, but uh,
uh,
I'm embracing it. Like some of the kids still think I'm in my 30s, so why the heck
well,
not?
I was gonna say that's actually one of the good things. If you actually really, if you're going bald, if you actually shave your head, no one knows how old you are. It drastically goes either way. I mean, with more gray coming in, it probably won't. But like people are like, I don't know how old you.
Oh,
well,
Avery
I was being
Brooks,
carded
Avery
for rated
Brooks
R
in
movies
Deep
up into
Space
my
Nine.
30s. So.
No, I'm hoping I get to age like Patrick Stewart, and people are just like, "Oh, that's just how you always looked."
Yeah. Okay, so final thoughts on ET. It To me, it was just a very solid kid-oriented story that was very well acted, awesome score, and understand the pop cult, its embracement by pop culture. It's not one of my favorites, but I will acknowledge it as a good movie.
Right. It's to me, it's like Goonies. Like they both,
Yeah.
they're kid centric. I mean, I always love that. It's a movie that dealt with kids growing up
Yeah.
because again, I was just in
See,
that age range, and
Goonies
um,
was my seminal childhood favorite. That was one of my cherished rewatches
right,
back in the day,
right.
and and all those kids, they were 13. No, Ki Hai Kwan, Sean Astin, and Corey Feldman were all 13. Um, God, Jeff Cohen, who's Chunk, he was 11 when.
Who's actually a
But
lawyer, an entertainment lawyer, and got a
Yeah.
referment from Steven Spielberg. He got
Oh
Yeah,
wow,
Steven wrote a letter for him to get into the school.
what a
You
great
know,
letter of recommendation!
yeah,
Yeah.
no
right?
kidding.
Yeah. But yeah. Lisa, how about you? What
Um,
about your closing?
yeah, I really love this movie. I never get tired of watching it. I'm with you, Chris. I think both this film and The Goonies were important films in my childhood, and I thought reflected childhood very well. And um, I don't know. This movie ages well. It's very, I think new generations can discover it and find something that they connect to as well. And I'm just happy it's still around, and it's been such a joy to talk about for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think this movie is beautifully made. It's a beautiful story. I think it's up there with something like To Kill a Mockingbird is one of the best films about children that deals
Hmm.
with children in a realistic manner. I think it's endearing, and I think that's why we're still talking about it 40 years later, and it's that rare movie that everyone just seemed to like at the time. I mean, there are probably people that are like, I don't get it, but like
well,
it's one of
remember
those.
there was that one angel in Dogma who thought Crush Groove would be the bigger movie.
But it's one of those rare movies that I'll say like 98% of the population critically and commercially were like, yeah, this is a good movie. And, you know, in a lot of ways, it's kind of hard to say what is Spielberg's masterpiece when he's made like arguably at least 10 to 12, if not more. Like,
Well,
I remember somebody saying like, "Oh, West Side Story's a return to form." I'm like, when has he like phoned it in? Like even the stuff that's not quite up to snuff, like
yeah,
it's still better than most other people's
the
movies.
I would say
Yes.
the closest thing Steven Spielberg has ever done to phoning it in was Lost World Jurassic Park.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have to agree with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
But even
but
then there's
and
like a couple of scenes where you're like, "Oh, that was cool."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's. I
His
still
worst
forget.
days better than some people's best days. Let's put it that way.
Honestly, I kind of wish there would be a Jurassic Park movie where all the kids from the previous movies who are now adults just kind of get together as like a support group, a support group for dinosaur trauma, and now they have to, and then the uh all the dinosaurs get loose now, but
You- you're
they're
dipping,
genre savvy enough to know how to deal with them.
you're
As
dipping
long
into
as
it
Jeff
territory.
Goldblum's not there to be their like group support, because he would just not help
Oh
with their trauma.
God.
Uh,
Oh.
life finds a way.
Oh.
Well, he'd just talk about chaos for 30 minutes and like just make them more
Yeah.
depressed.
Chaos theory. I love Jeff. Not being
Yes.
Yeah, not
Not
to
being
knock
mean.
Jeff Goldblum. Jeff
not being mean,
Goldblum.
guys. It's just his speech pattern is so recognizable. It's
It
like
is.
William Shatner's speech pattern. You're gonna recognize it
And
anywhere.
Goldblum is a better actor than
Oh, for sure.
Shatner.
Oh, of course. I'm mainly just referring to. I'm comparing their.
Yes,
The way
he
they
has a
speak.
definite. You could tell that it's Jeff Goldblum in this movie, even
Right.
even though he plays different characters. I mean, one of my favorite movies with him is Vibes, the movie with Cyndi Lauper where they're both psychics.
Oh yeah!
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I forgot about that. I was gonna.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna go with Earth Girls Are Easy with Gina Davis.
No.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much.
Mhm.
I know we were way off topic a lot. It happens, especially talking about a movie like this. But
Yes.
yes, thank you, Nick and Lisa and Lindsay and Cody, for
Of
joining
course,
us.
always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for
I
having
thought
us.
it was fun. I apologize for the train derailing a couple times.
Well,
But it
we're
wasn't
all
bad.
guilty of
Yeah.
it. Every
Yeah.
single
Of
one of
course.
us.
It's not a bad thing. We got to reminisce and talk about a lot of things. So
I think
yeah.
that's just the nature of this movie. Is it's gonna put you in that nostalgia blanket, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I might
we've
go to
gone off
Walmart
on
and see if I
nostalgia
can find it
more.
on DVD.
There you go.
I think we've gone off the nostalgia route with this movie more than any other movie we talked about. And you're right. I think this movie
Yeah.
just hits that button. So,
For sure.
but
Absolutely.
guys, thank you so much. If you're around tomorrow, want to hear some more jibber jab, we are talking. Cody, help me out here. No Country
We're
for Old
talking
Men.
No Country for Old Men. Speaking of Oscar winners and whether they hold up or
Yeah.
not. Yeah, for our Coen Brothers series. Yeah, we're talking
That-
No
that-
Country for Old Men.
That movie.
Unfortunately, I have
I'm
my
a
Sunday
part of
job
that.
to deal with, and then I got a whole bunch of errands to run.
I hear you. Well, guys, thanks a lot for that, and check us out tomorrow for No Country if you're around. And next week is our birthday week. Happy early birthday to me and you, Cody. So
Yeah.
Oh,
Yay.
Thanks.
thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
yeah, we'll be talking. I know I chose Big Trouble in Little China, and Cody,
Nice.
Ooh.
what did you choose?
I
Cody?
believe that's still on streaming, so I can reminisce about that. But also, did you know that there is, a comic series that's basically a sequel to the movie that was co-written by John Carpenter?
Yes.
Old Man Jack. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
want to get.
There's even a
The Continuing
crossover.
Adventures of Jack Burton.
There's even a crossover with him and Snake Plissken. So talk about
Nice.
multiverses.
Oh,
That's awesome. Well, guys, thank you so. Oh, Cody, I'm sorry. Which movie did you pick? You chose.
I chose Get Out because Nope is
Nice.
coming out next
Oh, good
week for
idea,
my
yeah.
birthday.
yes, yes.
Cannot
I would
wait
for
love to be
that.
there for those discussions.
And then the end of the month, we'll get back to 1982, sort of, but we have a guest that their dad worked on The Thing, John Carpenter's Thing.
Wow.
Ooh,
And
Nice.
he worked on In the Mouth of Madness. So we'll talk a little bit about that movie too with
Awesome.
our Thing
Wonderful.
discussion.
Nice.
Yeah.
I need to watch
I
that movie, In the Mouth of Madness.
I I've been curious about that. I do like John Carpenter's horror stuff. Like The Thing legitimately scared me, and Christine is actually one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations.
Oh, Christine's such a great show. I like that movie.
Oh, well, The Thing and In the Mouth of Madness are actually kind of oddly connected, other than being directed by Carpenter. They're considered the beginning and ending of his so unquote apocalypse trilogy.
Mm.
Huh.
Hmm. I didn't
Yeah,
I didn't think there was any kind of connectedness. I just thought these are movies John Carpenter wanted to
there's
make because
not really connectiveness. It's not like an actual trilogy, but they both deal with like cosmic horror and end of the world type of scenarios. And In the Mouth of Madness is probably the best Lovecraft movie that's not based on any Lovecraft material.
well, um a lot of cosmic horror was influenced by Lovecraft, even though they're not direct adaptations of his work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and of course there's a lot of unpacking to do when you're talking about a one YouTuber I follow calls it hates progress Lovecraft
I mean,
or horrible phobias Lovecraft.
the man was a horrible racist and probably lots of other things, but at the same time, it's like modern horror wouldn't exist without him.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it's well,
Well, it takes a monster to write monster stories.
uh, well, if we're going into Nietzsche territory, but
Ugh.
but yeah, I am all about recognizing an artist's contribution to a certain genre while acknowledging at the fact that yes, this was a horrible person.
Right.
This person was
Mhm.
horrible. Like my music history teacher often called talked about Wagner, called him the world's first Nazi.
Huh.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm not all about separating the artist from the art, but yes, I will say this person got the ball rolling on this kind of genre, and they're kind of terrible, kind of
Right.
a lot of terrible.
Yeah.
Well, guys, again, we'll take this opportunity, this little break, to go ahead and slip in there and start winding it down. Cody, did you have something you wanted to say?
Nope. Thank you, Lisa, for coming
Sure.
back. We appreciated it. Nick, thank you again for suggesting this series, and
Yeah.
we've loved having you on and contributing to these series of films.
Oh, like I said, it's always a pleasure
Oh,
to
Nick,
be.
you didn't see if you saw Nick's bobblehead in there, he's a part of the game now, Nick. So
Yep,
just
he is
Yeah,
officially part of the Video Store Rejects team.
whether you like it or
glad to
not.
be part of it. Yeah, of course,
Well,
my day is starting. I gotta go pick up prescriptions uh, from Kroger, and the spouse has been making going around, getting my attention subtly. But they were working on another cake. I can't remember. It's not a dump cake. It's not that. It's the kind of cake that where you um, drip jello into
Okay.
poke cake. Yes, yes. They're making another poke cake with. Last time they made it with uh, blueberries and strawberries into the shape like of a American flag because Fourth of July. This time it's just gonna be cherries and it's gonna be good. I'm looking forward to that, and we might poke our heads into that aviation museum.
oh,
Cool.
nice.
Nice.
Well, I'm
And
going to work on not bursting into flames when I step out the door. So
Seriously.
Same.
yeah, and yes, and of course, all of you watching, you can catch me on Twitter. My handle is uh, is on the little thing at Mr. Afro One. Of course, if you're a troll, I will kick you out. Go dump in someone else's yard.
Yes. Awesome. Lisa, is there anything you'd like to plug while we're here?
Sure. Yeah, if you want to give my podcast a chance, it's called I Love That Movie. I just have a guest on and we just talk about a movie that they love. There's no format. It's kind of like this. We just kind of free discussion and Cody's been on there a few times, so come check that out. You can find me anywhere you listen to podcasts.
All right.
Awesome.
It's um,
Right.
as always, it's a pleasure, and
Yeah.
we're getting ready to make the most out of this Saturday because Saturdays have always been my favorite day of the week.
Yeah, same.
Yes.
Cheers to that.
All right.
Everybody, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Stay cool, and yeah, go watch ET because it's amazing. It really is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Right.
Absolutely.